We are finally at the final step, which I call the home stretch of the home buying process. All of your hard work to this point has led you to this, but we're not done yet. The escrow process can be the most stressful part of the home buying process, but it does not have to be. Stay tuned to find out how you can better prepare for this stage and finally get the home you've always wanted. Coming up in 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to part 5 of my home buyer's guide. I'm Vince, Hawaii Realtor, and I'm glad to see you still here with me. It's been a long road to this point, but we're finally here. We're at the home stretch, the escrow process. This is where everyone from the realtor team, the escrow team, the lending team, home inspectors, appraisers, and many more come together to finalize your home journey. There's so many elements in the home buying process. It literally takes 50 plus people to complete one home purchase. This means you as a home buyer has blessed 50 plus people with work and with your business. This is why the government incentivizes home buying. It boosts the economy and it also benefits you and everyone else involved. So help your community out. Buy a home. So to recap, up to this point, we've gotten through 1, the starting line, 2, the planning stage, 3, first contact with your realtor and your loan officer, and then 4, the house hunting stage. Today we will be going over what you can expect during the escrow process, the top things that will determine whether or not you get through the escrow process, and then lastly, things that you do not want to do if you want to make it through the escrow process. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the first topic. What can you expect during the escrow process, that 30 to 45 day window? But before that, let's go ahead and define what escrow is. Escrow is a neutral third party that kind of acts as a mediator between every party involved. Typically, we're talking about between the buyer and the seller. Not that we expect there to be any foul play, but it basically takes all the guesswork out of it if we have someone that's neutral in between, making sure that both sides of the transaction is doing their part to make sure everything goes through properly. Escrow is where all the money and the funds is deposited and then later redistributed to all the parties involved. So we're talking about that initial money deposit that you offered in your purchase contract that goes to the seller. You deposit that to escrow. The down payment of the loan will also go there, as well as any additional funds or fees that have to be paid that goes towards escrow. Escrow will then hold all the checks and the money into a special account that was opened for this specific home purchase, and they will just hold it until the end of escrow, until everything is basically finalized. In the meantime, this 30 to 45 day window before the closing date is used to meet all the conditions inside of that purchase contract, the one that you offered to the seller and that they signed and sent back to you. The things that we're talking about are the home inspection, termite or surveying. These things are done on your behalf to make sure that you're actually getting a good home. You can also expect to receive the title so that way you can verify that the ownership and the title is clean. So that way when you take over as the owner of this new home, nothing bad is transferred to you. Another thing that you will do is work with your loan officer and the lender to get your loan finalized, to get it approved. Previously, you got pre-approved by your lender. At this point, we're trying to get you the final approval. Once all of those things in the purchase contract and the offer is finalized and it's checked off and it's approved by you and the seller, you would typically end this 30-day to 45-day window with a final walkthrough of the property to make sure it's still in the same condition that you saw it before you entered escrow. If anything has changed, the seller is expected to fix the issue or at least give you some kind of credit to fix it later on. And if everything checks out, the last thing that you would do is the recording of documents, or what we call closing. This is where you finally sit down and meet with your loan officer, your lender, or with the escrow officer. You sign a huge stack of disclosures and documents, ask any final questions you may have, and then receive the keys from the seller. Closing can take up to an hour, and it will be boring, trust me, but you do want to make sure that you understand everything it is that you're signing, and you ask good questions if you really truly do not understand. It's best that you take this 1 hour seriously and with intention, so that way you are set for the next couple of decades of owning this home. Now, I do know that in other states, it's very common for both the seller and the buyer to sit down together to finalize these documents, but in Hawaii, we actually do this separately. One session with the seller, one session with the buyer. Especially now that it is a pandemic, having that social distance is probably a good thing. Out of that stack of documents, you will receive the closing disclosure. This is a breakdown of the finances on this loan, which includes any fees that you're paying or any credits that you may receive as well. You want to make sure you compare this with that good faith estimate that you received in the beginning to make sure that nothing has changed since then. Now, normally your principal and interest payments are going to be the same from that good faith estimate, especially if you have a fixed rate interest rate. But you can't expect your taxes and insurance to possibly be different. It all depends on what happens in the middle of escrow and what you agree upon with whatever company you go with. Now, once you've signed all these documents, you're not technically the owner just yet. These documents do need several days to finalize. So this is recording in 3 to 4 business days, you will officially close on the home. So even if we happen to receive the keys from the seller on the recording day, you won't officially be handed the keys by your realtor until the official closing day, just to make sure everything goes well. Once it's official, your realtor will more than likely help you access your new home and then hand you the key personally. And that's it. It is a short window, especially now where it's typical to see a 30-day close. So once you're in escrow, you'll be moving into your new home in the blink of an eye. So that was a brief overview of what you can expect in the escrow process. There absolutely is more to it, but that's for you to actually find out in the process. I'm just going over the most important things. And so that leads into the next topic. What are the top things that will determine whether or not you get through the escrow process? The first would be the home inspection. Typically, the buyer's agent will hire a home inspector to go into the house and inspect every single thing to make sure there are no issues with the home. At the end of that inspection, you as a buyer will receive an inspection report. Typically, you have 3 different options at this point. 1, you take the home as is, as in you're not going to request any fixes to the home because they're either too small to care about, or maybe because of the condition that the market is in right now, you don't have an option to request anything because the seller has that much leverage on you. The second option is asking the seller to resolve certain issues, or you can ask the seller for some credits, as in funds to help fund you fixing it later on your own. And then lastly, if the issues that you find in the inspection report are way too big of an issue to have to deal with, then you can ultimately walk away at this point and find a better home. Again, the escrow process, the whole idea behind it is to make sure that you are actually getting the home that you want. And also, you want to make sure it's a good investment of a home. If there's too much wrong with it, there's too much damage, then maybe it's best long-term wise to just cut your losses and find a better home to invest in. Okay, so that first one is the home inspection. The second thing that would determine whether or not you get through the escrow process is your loan approval. Your loan officer will take that pre-approval that was handed previously and then work towards finalizing towards a real approval of the loan. Your loan is typically taken in by the underwriting team of the lender and then examined to make sure that there are no big risks to lending you money. This means that they may ask for more additional documentation just to verify that you can cover paying off this loan. Sometimes they may not even ask anything more of you, but most times they will give you a conditional loan approval. This does not necessarily mean a bad thing. This just means that if you meet the said conditions, then you're approved for the loan. A lot of people stress when they get that conditional loan approval, but it actually is very common. They're not picking on you whatsoever. They just want to verify and have better reassurance that lending you money won't be a bad thing. It's another way to build that trust, I guess. At this stage, this is the reason why it was important to pick the right loan officer, because this is where you work with your loan officer and ask them any questions you may have. Your realtor is basically helpless at this point, other than working as a third party to help communicate between you two. But your loan officer will be the expert in anything that has to do with the loan. Your realtor is the expert outside of those things. If you happen to find it difficult to read the documents and for whatever reason the loan officer is not able to help you with these things, they should be able to. Another option you may have that is very common in other states is to possibly hire a lawyer. Lawyers are able to decipher and break down everything that's in these said contracts or documents. Okay, and so other than the home inspection and the final loan approval, you will need the appraisal. The appraisal is done to help the lender determine the true value, the appraised value of the home you intend to buy. It is very common to see right now that sellers are listing their homes on the market for more than what it can probably be valued for, because they know that there are buyers willing to pay extra to beat out the competition. But there's a problem because the lender is only willing to finance what the home is worth, not what you as the buyer and the seller agree upon to purchase the home. Now, if the list price and the appraised value end up being equal, or even better, if the appraised value ends up being more than the list price, then you're typically at a good spot. That means the lender is able to cover the full amount of the home on the loan. The problem comes when the appraised value comes in lower than the list price or the price that you agreed to pay. Since the lender is only willing to finance the amount that it's valued for, you have to come up with the difference between that and the list price. That difference is how a lot of buyers right now are ending up paying more out of pocket, on top of the down payment, on top of the closing cost. So in this situation, your options are having that appraisal clause. So in the offer in part 4 that you gave to the seller, you can put a condition in there, which we call the appraisal clause, where you're willing to cover the difference if the appraised value comes in lower, and you're willing to pay a certain amount, not to exceed the list price maybe. So for example, let's say that you and the seller agreed that you would buy the house for $600,000, and then the appraised value comes in at $590,000. Let's say you and the realtor were smart enough to know that the value would come under, so you put into the offer that you will have an appraisal clause of at least $20,000 or up to $20,000, not to exceed that $600,000 that you guys agreed upon originally. The loan will cover the $590,000, the appraised value of the home, and then you will pay that $10,000 difference. That's the first option. Now, the other option you may have, let's say that difference ends up coming in more than in the expected $20,000 appraisal clause. Or let's say you're just in a regular market and you're not willing to pay that much. Another option you have is to ask the seller to come up 50-50. So if there's that difference of $10,000, then the seller would come down $5,000 and you will come up $5,000. That is something you would typically see in a normal market where you have more negotiation power between the buyer and the seller. But right now, again, we are in a seller's market, so you don't really have that kind of option right now. The sellers have all the leverage. And then lastly, you also have the option to fall out or walk away from this home if the difference ends up being more than what you anticipated or you're willing to pay. You do risk losing a lot of time and money, that initial money deposit that you put in with your offer. But if you can't come up with that difference and it's severely undervalued, then again, it might be just time to cut your losses and go with a better home, or go find a better home. So those are the 3 big things that will determine whether or not you get through escrow. On top of those 3 things, there are things you want to make sure you do not do while you're still in escrow. As mentioned in part 4, the house hunting phase, your financial status and your accounts should remain the same from when you got pre-approved all the way to closing. You want to make sure you do not do anything that could affect that. We're talking about major purchases, opening up lines of credit, paying off your debts, and then also like changing your job or quitting. You want to do these things either way before buying the home or entering into the home buying process, or shortly after closing. Don't quit your job though. You do definitely need that. Things like buying furniture or certain things for your new home can be done after you close. Okay, and so that is the escrow process. I did go over just a brief overview of those things, but again, you do have those 50 plus people helping you, making sure that your home journey is a success. So typically you are good in the escrow process. Understanding this should be enough for you to do your part to make sure this goes through successfully. So good luck to you when you go through the escrow process. In no time, you will be a homeowner and you can say congrats. In the next video, I'll go over what to expect after you become a homeowner and to think long-term, how to build that generational wealth so that way you can be set for the rest of your life financially. Anyways, that's it for this video, short and sweet. I hope you guys have a great day. If you could leave a like for this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in part 6. Have a good day.